I can't wait for you guys to see this next episode with Dr. Benhart. I'm not going to say a whole lot other than you've come to the right place if you want to learn about drones, geospatial science, and frogs. I can't wait to get into this one. So let's get into it. Something that's starting to go hand in hand with drones, Josh, is also the 360 cams. And I've talked about, I got this new camera and was hyping it up and, saying, oh, I can do these neat things where I could show you walkthroughs and stuff. And I want to kind of be careful because this is going to be on YouTube. So I'm not going to do a zoomed out view of where I'm at. But I want to share with you guys, I did do a walkthrough just to see what it's like. So let me share what I have here because I think that it would be worthwhile to talk about. Can you guys see the screen here?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so right here is supposed to be where it was supposed to go around here, but because I don't have ground control, and that's something that Dr. Benhart can touch on after this for why, my map is in the neighbor's yard and different places like that, is because it doesn't have the true coordinates, and that's something that, scientifically you need to have. But let me show you what I'm talking about. So right here is a habitat that I've created. This is my prototype. So you've got the 3 artificial pools, and this was created to encourage certain species of frogs to cross the street or come from both sides of the suburban neighborhood to, to just observe, well, for me to observe them breeding to see could we actually do this. So I had to read a bunch of articles, research, peer-reviewed journals on how people were creating these habitats and then measure that off of the success with the animals. But here's the thing, now the nonprofit is trying to get its name out there by creating these habitats. Well, wouldn't it be cool? Of course I want to have aerial imagery, but now let me walk around and, imagine how I could get investors excited about this. I could do different walkthroughs here. You can see my weather station. That's another thing we're going to add in. I think I can, there I am. There we go. But
that's done.
Yeah, let me walk over here. But I don't think anybody would think that this is just cool or a waste of space. I think look at the need. I mean, imagine me taking this, Dr. Benhart. This would probably be a good segue for you to talk after. I'm sure you've been in a room where you're talking to people who are interested in what you have to say, but they have no idea what this means. Like, to the board, Josh isn't in the nonprofit. He's a part strictly of the media brand. But there's a lot of people that have no idea whenever I talk about drones and 360 cams and walkthroughs and aerial imagery, like that goes right over their heads. But if I show you, I'm literally walking around my backyard here and, I can say this pool has an egg clutch in it today, which it literally does. And these ones don't, and maybe we want to compare why that is, or we just want to do a walkthrough. I can only say so much that is gonna reach people, but these pictures and these walkthroughs and the aerial imagery, all that together, that tells the bigger story, and that's what I'm very fascinated about.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a sense what you're doing is you're connecting scales, right? So, you have your drone imagery from some altitude, right? That's showing some perspectives on a site or on a trail or on a structure or whatever. And then you're able to help people experience it at these different scales and these different if you want to, spatial ecosystems. And, again, I haven't thought a lot about that, but it makes sense to me. That's why I think what we're going to try to do in our class, Aaron, is test it on the new Kopchik building and see, what is that experience like? Or how, I think we can learn a lot from that, right? Like what is going to be an optimal experience of combining those perspectives. And I think the other thing, from the standpoint of drone deploy, and I think drone deploy is responding probably to customers, right? Customers want to, drones are very good at helping them capture what's happening um, outside of a building or outside of an environment. Something like this will help them migrate that inside, and it's very interesting to try to connect that. So I find it very interesting, and I haven't used this type of footage before, and I'm interested to see how it can be used. I certainly agree with you that it can provide, it's sort of like Google Street View, but way better,
Yeah.
right? And because it's customized to what you're wanting to see, and you probably also already have data that will allow it to, like I said, you're really changing scales.
Imagine the commercial implications for that. Like think of somebody who might want to see, Disneyland and Disney World, whatever, in Florida, and like they could hire a team to go through the park, and like you could literally go through the park, and that's an advertisement type of thing. Like I could see them investing in that.
Yeah, so you can see there's so much value in this, and obviously now it has me walking in places I wasn't, but so this is kind of funny. We're doing this. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but um,
You'll get better at it, and it'll also get better too. It's pretty new.
yeah, but
Absolutely.
I also have to get ground control.
Yeah, no,
Hey,
we can help you with that as we discuss, and we're going to be getting into that.
right
In
here
fact, we're going to be
is
talking about that tomorrow.
awesome. Right here, I don't think you can really see it, but that's the egg clutch that was laid. And the reason why that's important is because, for 4 years now, and I think you have to have 5 years before it's deemed a success. Um, your target species has to come and it has to at least reproduce once. This was the very first night that the wood frogs in our area have been laying eggs. So I'm 1-0, literally. But that's a huge that's a huge deal though that we got them 4 years straight to lay eggs in these pools. And for proof of concept for people that write grants, here, like I could say, oh, here it is, like this is where it is, and walk you around and stuff like that. But um, Dr. Benhart, why don't you elaborate a little bit on like why the map was zigzagged and off place, like out of place, the need for what ground control is, and
Yeah, I mean, integrating GPS with any technology is extremely powerful. A lot of us are used to it, right? Because it's integrated into our phones. The question is, how accurate are the position calculations, and that's dependent upon the design of the receiver, right? And that's something that we will talk about a little bit, in our next couple classes. But basically, there are different types of GPS, and for a lot of things, you don't really have to be any closer than 3 to 5 meters, right? Even for your driving directions, right? It's telling you you're about at a location. You see the stop sign, like, oh, okay. It doesn't have to be more accurate than that, or you have to be on the road, right? And so but for things like a walkthrough, right, or things like you were trying to do, or if you're trying to measure something, or you're trying to measure something over time, this is where more accurate positioning becomes important, because what happens is whatever platform you're running, in the case of processing drone imagery into a map, or trying to take your 360 camera and have it integrate with imagery that you've acquired from a drone. Here's where being within 15 feet or 20 feet isn't going to work, right? Because it's not going to work because you're wanting to walk on a trail, and if you're 15 feet off, then you're in the woods, right? For example, right?
yeah.
So this is where, again, the GPS, drones are a transformative technology, as we've been discussing. The GPS was and is a transformative technology. It allows us in near real time to ascertain our location as a drone's flying, or for targets that we put on the ground. And if we put those targets on the ground, we commonly call that ground control. They have to be in view of the drone when flying over, or plane or whatever. We can use those calculated locations to, if you want to think about it, to spatially calibrate the imagery and put it into accurate coordinate space. And that's very, very, very useful. Now, I'm sure you guys have heard of real-time kinematic, RTK, GPS. You know, one of the things that people commonly misunderstand about the GPS is you know, this is a fantastical technology system. You've got signals traveling from satellites from near Earth atmosphere through, you know, the levels of Earth atmosphere and at the speed of light, and that's being received by, you know, a receiver on a drone or your phone or whatever. And there's going to be error in that. The other thing is the Earth's rotating on its axis, right, while this is happening. And it's not a sphere, right? It wobbles a little bit as there's all kinds of things that have to be accounted for in the use of the GPS. The way that we get really accurate coordinates is to find out the factors that cause error and to try to correct them. That's called differential correction. So there are places on Earth that we have really, really, really accurate coordinates for, and we can keep seeing how the calculations from the satellites differ at those locations where we already know where they are. And we can get what's called error data from them. That error data can be broadcast to us, and we can apply it to our positioning. And there's different ways of doing that, right? So you can do that real time. The issue with doing that real time, as we'll discuss in class, is that we don't know exactly where the satellites were when they broadcast the signal. We have a pretty good idea. We have a really good idea because we know the orbit parameters. But if we wait 12 plus hours, we can know exactly where the satellite was instead of a prediction of where it was. So that there you go.
We did this with Dr. Hoke, so we got to do this with you too. It was like
Okay.
rapid fire questions, just a couple of them.
Okay.
So are you ready for this?
Well, I don't know, but I'll try.
Okay. If you could do a dream drone mission, where would it be and what drone would you use?
Dream drone mission. Well, Aaron, I have proposed this for a sabbatical. My dream drone mission is to evaluate coastal land use in Southwest Florida communities impacted by hurricanes. I'm very interested in, you know, from a planning and resource use standpoint, building large, very expensive, vulnerable structures in areas where there's a high probability of a hurricane or tropical cyclone striking does not make a lot of sense, and it certainly doesn't make sense for all of us to subsidize extremely rich people having second homes in those places. So my dream, it would be a number of missions. There's two communities, one Fort Myers Beach, Fort Myers, and Marco Island, Cudjoe Key. Those both areas were hit with hurricanes within the last 10 years. So I'd be flying the Wingtra over those because it's a fixed wing, and it's really good at linear passes, right? So I could just get the coastal land use, and I would be able to, depending on how I flew them, but I'd be able to get really accurate information about how land was being used, the size of structures. I could, I'd have to supplement it with property deed research stuff like so. That's my dream.
Okay. Do you believe it's better to go straight into academics or to go into the private sector for industry jobs? Like, what would be better for a college? If you're thinking about going to college, like what would you think to do? Like PhD, masters, or you get your undergrad and then go join the workforce?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question. The way I did it was I was gonna take a job in Washington County, Maryland, as a planner, with my undergraduate degree. I was going to take a job as a GIS analyst for Dade County, Florida, with my master's degree. The reason that I ended up going on to school was I just applied to graduate programs to see if I got funded. And then I also applied to jobs. And because I got funded at the University of Miami and I got funded at the University of Tennessee, everything was paid for. I continued. That doesn't mean I think it's a great idea for everybody to do that, right? I mean, in a lot of respects, I think probably getting a job and evaluating how well you like that job with your undergraduate degree and what kind of opportunities you think you have is a pretty good idea. Could be a very good idea. And if you like what you're doing, why, when students ask me, do you think I should go on, or I know, what are your, what do you want to do? What are your objectives? I think the answer to whether you should pursue any level of education has to do with, well, what are the requirements for you to get the kind of jobs or opportunities that you want? Going to getting a PhD is, it took me, ended up taking me 11 years. I took 10 years. I started working at IUP before. That's a lot of time. If you can do, I actually really like teaching and I like doing research. There's a lot to be said for it. But if that's not what you want to do, then you don't have to go to graduate school. That's one thing I think people misunderstand about, I work at a university. That doesn't mean I think everyone should go. I think you should go if you want to go, if it corresponds with what you want to do. I don't want everyone to do what I do. So I certainly don't want people to go to university and not want to be there or not like what they're doing. You shouldn't go because somebody else tells you to go. So my short answer is, I think it's just as good of an option or better option to go out and get a job with your undergraduate degree and see what kind of opportunities you believe that you have. And if you like what you're doing, right? Like I said, I hedged my bets at every level. And when I did that, I decided, hey, I can get an all expenses education at the University of Miami. I didn't even realize how expensive it was. I thought that was a really good opportunity. And then, same. So that's my answer.
Okay, two more. So, do you think DJI drones are going to get banned with the next administration?
I think that the concern about DJI drones is not going away. I think that, and for good reason. Anybody who's looked at this knows that any companies incorporated in China under Chinese law have to give the Chinese government any data they ask for. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, that to be incorporated in China, so they can say anything they want. How much is the data from DJI drones being used by the Chinese guy? I have no idea. So my answer is, I think it'll continue. And if you're wanting to do federal government work, or you want to work for a contractor for the federal government, I think it's going to be a problem. I wouldn't just have DJI drones.
That puts me in a spot because I might do freelance work for like conservation districts, and that's government.
Yeah, I don't know. Conservation districts are state.
Well, yeah.
I can tell you, in Florida, law enforcement agencies had in the state of Florida, law enforcement agencies had DJI drones, right? They have a huge market share, right? The state said cease and desist with those. Those are no longer to be used for any law enforcement or emergency response activities. Only drones made by EU countries or by US companies. I would love to see US companies making good drones that are robust and affordable. I would love that.
It's funny because Insta 360, the the 360 cam is also made in China. I found that out when I was trying to get that lens imported, and I thought I was going to get a tariff on it. But anyway, last question. At some point, hopefully, we put enough pressure on Dr. Shaney to come on. What would your question be opening with him? What do you think would be a good one to ask him to start the podcast?
One, why is it? Well, I've got a couple parts as well. Why won't you answer my emails? Two, what is taking you so long to on the podcast? Why is it so hard to schedule you? And three, why didn't you buy Ben Hart a beer whenever we were out to dinner last week? Greensburg, he thought you were going to buy him a beer, and it was sadly mistaken.
We're going to have to get on him about it.
Oh, yeah, I would get on about all three of those things.
Well, we'll definitely work on that. But thank you so much, Dr. Benhart, for joining us. And it'd be great at some point to have you come back on and talk about projects that you're doing, and in class and personally and different things like that. But hopefully you'll consider coming back.
I will definitely consider it. I appreciate you guys inviting me. It's been fun, and I've enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you. I'll see you in class tomorrow, Dr.
I will
Benhart.
see you tomorrow. And
Yeah.
Josh, it was nice to meet you.
Hey, you too. Thank you.
And we'll see. See ya.
See you.
Yep. See ya.